Good morning to all of you. In the last class, we have tried to understand about a
Good
small
morning, sir.
phylum. Yes, small phylum that is the Ctenophora. And now, after completing the Ctenophora, let me move on to the next very important class and a very big class, I should say that. That's the Mollusca. So today onwards, we will be discussing for another 4 5 hours about this class Mollusca. Mollusca, phylum Mollusca is a second biggest phylum among the vertebrates as well as invertebrates. I should say. All of you know that Arthropoda is the largest class, and the second largest class is the phylum Mollusca. So this phylum Mollusca is the second largest phylum, and more than that, we have more than 1 lakh specimens or species that has been identified and described. And this is such a wonderful class. You can see them everywhere. Though most of them are marine, even you can see freshwater, terrestrial, especially one particular group that the gastropodons are very successful even on the land. So even their body plans, if you see, there's a great diversity with respect to their uh, body plans. So that's why we have maximum number of classes among this phylum Mollusca. So the body size also varies from very minute, especially from 1 mm to 80, approximately 18 meters. That is 1 mm to 60 feet long. You can see or observe under this file. So that's why the diversity is very high. Even the size class, as I have told you, 1 mm to 18 mm, 18 meters or not mm, 18 meters. But 80% of the organisms will be under 5 centimeters. But there are certain very large form, and they are an important source of food even to the human beings also. So the phylum Mollusca is divided into seven classes: gastropoda, cephalopoda, bivalvia, aplacophora, monoplacophora, pelecypoda, scapopoda. So that's why I have told you. See, I have exhibiting a photographs or picture of some of the examples. By observing that, you can come to the conclusion that there is the body plan is highly diverse. So because of that, we have more number of classes in this phylum Mollusca. See, different shape, size. Now, let's try to understand some of the key features of these molluscans or characteristics. One is the body surface is ciliated. Some may not be there, but in maximum number of forms, if you observe closely, on the surface of the body, you can see the cilia, that the ciliated body surface. Then another interesting feature is the calcareous shell. Probably all of you love to collect the shells when you go to a beach. Whatever the shells that you collect, the shells may be of different shape, size, color, but all of them belongs to phylum Mollusca. And they have a very interesting thing, that is externally they are protected by calcareous shell that is made out of calcium carbonate. And even the calcareous shell is composed of three primary layers. One is outer periostracum, middle perismatic layer, that is the where you can see the crystals of calcite, that is the calcium carbonate, and inner nacre, that is the flat crystals of the calcium carbonate. So in the middle layer you can see the columnar crystals, and in the inner layer you can see the flat crystals of calcite, that is the calcium carbonate. Very interesting feature here is the dorsal surface, the mantle. Mantle is the dorsal surface of the body wall, and it is modified in such a way that it secretes the shell. Whatever the calcareous shell that has been secreted, that will be mostly above the uh, mantle, because the mantle secretes this calcium carbonate shells or calcareous shells. Now let's try to understand the characters of this phylum Mollusca one by one. One is the body character. They are all soft-bodied organisms. Maybe externally covered by calcareous shell. In some, it may be internal also. But as far as the animal is concerned, it is soft-bodied organism. And body is unsegmented. There is no segmentation in the body, and they are all soft-bodied. No doubt, they are all triploblastic. That is outer ectoderm, inner endoderm. In between, you can see the third layer, that the mesoderm. So they are unsegmented organisms, and at the same time, they do not possess any jointed appendage. Unlike the arthropods, which are known for jointed appendages, here in the molluscans, no jointed appendages are seen. Soft bodied, unsegmented, and without joint, jointed appendages, no joints. Now, the body exhibits bilateral symmetry. What is bilateral symmetry? Right half with the mirror image of the left half. That is the bilateral symmetry they exhibit. Then, externally, the mantle secretes a hard brittle calcareous shell. The presence of shell is very important because the body is very soft. So the hard shell, which is secreted by the mantle above the soft bodied organism, protects the organism. Now the body is divided into head, mantle, visceral mass, and foot. The body is divided into four divisions. One is the head. Naturally, the head carries the, what you can call the, here you can see the head region, and the head carries the mouth and a pair of eyes generally, and tentacles. They are seen in the head region, the mouth, eyes, and tentacles. Then the body is also divided into mantle. Mantle is the thick muscular fold of the body. Thick muscular fold of the body. You can see this is the mantle. Muscular fold of the body, you call it as mantle. Then there is also visceral mass that contains all the internal organs. Visceral mass. See, from here to here, you can see the visceral mass. Then the foot. It's a foot is a very well developed in case of the molluscans. Not only well developed, they are modified also. We will discuss about that later. See, there is a well developed foot, and this foot is ventral, thick, and muscular, and it is meant for or modified for creeping and seizing the things. If you look into the digestive organs or visceral mass, alimentary canal is well developed and coiled. A well developed alimentary canal, which you can see, and not only well developed, it's also highly coiled structure. Highly coiled structure. Respiration is by means of the gills, which are found here. Respirate by gills, and these gills are enclosed in the mantle cavity. Circulatory system. There's a very interesting feature. you can expect here, it's a lacunar type with dorsal heart and few blood vessels. You can see this, there's a dorsal heart, this is the heart, and few blood vessels, you can see them. And most of them are closed type, but still there are few open type of circulatory system is also there. Excretory organs, one or two pairs of kidney, or generally people it is called as the nephridium only. Modified nephridium is the kidney. A pair, one or two pairs of kidney you can expect. Then, as far as the nervous system is concerned, nervous system consists of paired cerebral, pleural, pedal, and visceral ganglia. What is, see, there are so many ganglia here. Here are so on ganglia. There is a cerebral in the head region, pleural near the gills, then in the pedal in the foot region, and in the visceral mass there is the ganglia. What do you mean by ganglia? Ganglia is the localized clumping of the nerve cells or neurons to form a nerve mass. That is what we call ganglia. As far as the reproduction is concerned, sexes are usually separate. But in some, exceptionally, there are certain examples where sexes are united. But generally, the sexes are separate. Gonads are usually unpaired. Unpaired, not paired gonads, testis or ovary, they are unpaired. Fertilization may be either external or internal. Most of the cases, it is again external fertilization. Now, how this organism feeds? They have a tongue-shaped structure, and that is what is known as radula. And it has hundreds of teeth. See, this is how the radula has been arranged. So, this radula is the cutting and chewing or masticating organ of the animal. Some have the jaws also surrounding the radula. So, radula will be a hard uh, structure which contains hundreds of teeth. Uh, then so they can cut and feed on them. Even there are someone which uses the gills to filter feed. There are only few, not many. Few of them undertake the filter feeding. When the water enters to the gills, they grab the food and use that. Respiration, aquatic molluscans use the gills, and uh, the gills are known as the tenidia or the gills, which you can expect them. And terrestrial molluscans use the mantle cavity itself. Uh, the mantle cavity is adapted to resemble the advanced lung. So terrestrial molluscans use the mantle cavity, and aquatic molluscans they use the gills. Internal transport, as I have told you, they have many uh, open circulatory system, and few have the closed circulatory system also. The one interesting thing which has been observed in the molluscans is the one which are moving very slowly, they have closed, moving very fast, they have closed circulatory system. The organisms which are very slowly creeping, they have open circulatory system. So most of them have open circulatory system, and even now how the elimination and excretion takes place here. The elimination, the solid waste leaves through the anus, that the undigested food materials which are excreted out or expelled out through the anus as a fecal matter. And nitrogen wastes are excreted by so-called kidney, that is what you call the nephridia. Nephridia undertake the excretion, and undigested food has to leave the body through the anus in the form of fecal matter. Now, response greatly varies within the phylum as far as their sensory system is concerned, especially the sense organs are concerned. Many have very simple nervous system, for example, clams. But some have highly developed nervous system with a well-developed brain. For example, the octopus, where you have octopuses have well highly developed nervous system, even well-developed brain. Even octopus has well-developed eyes also. Then sexes are separate in most, but as I have told you, in some sexes are not separate. Fertilization is external in most, but internal fertilization is also seen or possible in some. Some of the other characters, radula is a very interesting feature here. Rasping tongue with the chitin teeth, sometimes also chitinous jaws, which help in cutting the object. Then tinidia are ciliated gills for respiratory gas exchange, which are located in the mantle cavity. These are the ciliated gills, which are meant for gaseous exchange, or in other words, you can say that it is for the respiration. Open circulatory system is also seen, and the coelom is reduced. The body cavity, the size of the body cavity is much reduced. Especially the radula, the use of radula is concerned. Herbivorous organisms use radula to scrap the algae from the rocks and twigs. They can scrap or to eat the plants. Radula is used. Whereas carnivorous organisms use the radula to drill through the shell of other animals. Even radula is so powerful and strong, it can drill through the shell of other animals. So, in carnivores, in one particular example, the cone shells, they use radula as poisonous darts to kill the predator or the prey, because in the cone shells the radula is provided with a poisonous material, toxic material, and that has been used to um, kill the or to paralyze the prey and predators both. The molluscans, being having soft bodied, protection is the major issue, and at the same time they are very slow moving organisms or uh, crawling organisms. Some of them, how they get protection? Some of them can dig their own burrow and get themselves buried in that or hide in the burrows. Some have well developed brain and they rely on sensors and intelligence to avoid predators. As I have told you, the octopus and all those things. They have the intelligence and they know how to, they will use their intelligence and uh, run away from the predators. Some are fast swimmers. For example, sea butterflies flap their shells and swim with very high speed. Some rely on poisonous material, because if the predator feeds on them, they taste very bad. So that's why predators will not prey upon them. They are tasting bad, especially snails and slugs. There are some aquatic organisms, when the predator approach them, they release a very dark ink from the body. So what happens in the when they release large amount of ink, very dark ink, they can escape, because in the ink, dark ink, the animal is not visible to the predator and they can escape. For example, squids. Even there are some showing camouflaging. That means they are able to change the colors so as to blend with the surroundings. So in the aquatic medium, the predator will not be able to identify them because the color of the animal blends with the color of the surroundings. So they are not easily spotted. Now, how these molluscans affect the human beings? Many of the molluscans are used as food, and many of you may be eating that. Snails, clams, oysters, scallops, squids, etc. They are the delicious food for the human beings. But not, while eating these molluscans, one should be very careful. If you catch them during the red tides, and sometime in ocean there will be red tides because of the growth of some of the red algae, there will be red tides. During that period, you should avoid that. Otherwise, in the other season, the snails, clams, oysters, scallops, squids, they add delicacy to your food. Then molluscans as pests. Many times they are pests also. Snails, slugs damage the crops because they are terrestrial. Even shipworms. This is a major problem for the. It was a major problem in olden days for the ships because the ships were made out of wood, and they used to these shipworms. They used to attach to the ship and drill through the wood. So that's why they were the major problem for voyage, sea voyage. Lot of these molluscans are used for biological research like cancer research and all. Apart from that, uh, the molluscans have ornamental value. Uh, Many of the shells are used for ornamental purpose. You can polish them, you can use them for various purposes, starting from pen stand to keychain to write your name. So many things can be done on this molluscan shell. And the conch shell has lot of religious and spiritual value. Conch shell ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಶಂಖ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಿ. It has lot of uh, religious and um, value. So this phylum Mollusca is divided into seven classes. We will try to understand one by one and with their example hereafter. First, let me start with the class one, the Pelicopoda, or also known as bivalvia. Pelicopoda or bivalvia. These are mostly marine organisms. Pelicopoda, but few freshwater forms are also there. For example, the freshwater mussel, the union. Then they can burrow in mud and sand. They have a laterally compressed body, flat body mostly. Many of the muscles that you have seen, even the mitylus, it's a flat like a stone. Bilateral symmetry they observe. Unlike other molluscans, these do not exhibit a distinct head. There is no distinct head here, unlike other uh, molluscans. Good example for Pelicopoda mussels, Unio, and Mytilus. Mytilus, you may be knowing that's in Kannada what you call Kalaga. First, let's start with the Unio because it's the uh, bivalve. The bivalve means, Pelicopoda or bivalve. Uh, this all of them are having externally protected by shell, but there are two shells, bivalves. So two shells, and both the shells are attached at the hinge margin. So the Unio, and a very good example. and more popular example. It's found in the freshwater ponds, lakes, streams, and even rivers. If at all any water body without any pollution you see, then you are likely to get this UDO. The animal is a sedentary animal, but flows slowly through the mud and sand with the help of its wedge-shaped muscular foot. Basically, they are sedentary, but even they can move very slowly through the mud or sand by its wedge-shaped muscular foot. Wedge-shaped muscular foot function like a plow, and it can plow through the mud and sand, especially at the bottom of rivers or pond. But it did not go to very deep. Even when they get buried, not fully buried, the posterior extremities of the wall remain exposed, or they should remain exposed to the water current to ingress and egress the water. The water should flow through them. Then only they will be able to undertake the respiration. So this is the photograph of what you call the unio or freshwater mussel. Two shells you can see. Actually, both of them are attached here. Uh, they are also called as lamellidans. The body laterally flattened. You can see here they are flat bodies. Laterally flattened body, and anterior side of the body is roughly oval in outline, and posterior side is narrower. See, here it is narrower, uh, and whereas here it is little bit broad. If you open that, that will appear like that. They have bilaterally symmetrical body. Their size varies from 5 to 10 centimeters in length. In length from here to here, 5 to 10 centimeters in length. This is how inside the unio appears. The soft inside the cell, there's a soft body of unio which is completely enclosed by a hard calcareous shell. Hard calcareous shell. Shell is composed of two symmetrical equal halves called walls. See, both are equal. Each one is known as wall. And these walls, uh, they are known as right and left walls. So these two halves are united and joined at an elastic band called hinge ligament. Here, in this position, they are attached, and this is known as hinge ligament. In rest of the ear, it is open, but here they are joined by means of hinge ligament. Two shell walls. It is made up of elastin and causes the wall of the shell to open. So as it is a hinge-like joint, the shell can open. Near the hinge ligament are teeth and sockets which fit into each other to form an efficient interlocking arrangement, which prevent the displacement of the two shells. Interlocking arrangement here. Here actually there is an interlocking arrangement. They are joined perfectly like this, and that's the most like this, and that is perfectly makes the organism not to get separated. Body is elongated but laterally compressed, as I have told you. There is no head. Of course, there is the characteristic feature of this bivalvia, two shells. In the upper half of the visceral mass, which passes into the mid-ventral and wedge-shaped laterally compressed foot. Here, the very interesting and larger one is mid-ventral wedge-shaped laterally compressed foot. And the foot is directed upwards, facing upwards. Uh, and this is an adaptation for burrowing. So with that, they can plow on the sand or mud. Uh, the food inside has a large sinus, and this sinus is not empty, but it is being filled with uh, blood. The When the food is to be extended, blood pressure and muscular action forces the food to extend. And muscular action is caused by a pair of muscles, that is pedal protractor muscles, a pair of pedal protractor muscles, and these protractors extend transversely. These protractors extend transversely from each side of the foot to the opposite shell wall. From each side of the foot to the opposite shell wall, and this pedal protractor muscles, pedal protractor muscles, they are responsible for extending the foot during the flowing. See, this is how it appears. This is the flat one. Here you can see the hinge ligament, and okay, on the surface of the shell, the highly elevated region is known as umbo. And on the shell, you can see the lines of growth. By counting this line, you can estimate the age of them also. The inner surface of the shell wall is semi-transparent mantle, or mantle is also called a pallium, which is made out of two lobes, and both the lobes are continuous on the dorsal side. The mantle is like a skin. Inside the mantle, it encloses the soft parts, and also the mantle also hangs down as like a skirt. Inside the mantle, there is the enclosed by the mantle is the mantle cavity, which extend to the entire length of the body on each side. The mantle cavity can be divided into two chambers. The cavity which is inside the mantle is known as mantle cavity, can be divided into two chambers. One is a larger ventral infrabranchial chamber, a large ventral infrabranchial chamber, and a small dorsal suprabranchial chamber. There are two chambers it forms. The mantle cavity uh, forms two chambers. One is large ventral infrabranchial chamber, and a small dorsal suprabranchial chamber. Locomotion. As I have told you, the muscular foot is the only and the main locomotory organ. When the walks, better close, we can say that the foot is thrust forward between the two halves of the shell and burrows like a plow and through the mud. This permits the blood to flow into the many sinuses of the foot, causing the foot to swell, and thus, with the help of that, it can anchor firmly in the mud or sand. This is the hinge joint, you can see them. This is the highest elevation, umbo. Inside, you can see semi-transparent mantle cavity sites. Unio is a dioecious animal in which sexes are separate. Gonads are paired structures made up of branching tubes that lie in the coils of intestine. In the coils of intestine, you can see the gonads as a paired structure. Testes are whitish in color and ovaries are reddish. The ducts coming from both the testis and ovary open into the suprabranchial chamber in the gills. In the gills, there's a chamber called as suprabranchial chamber. In the suprabranchial chamber, the testis and ovary opens through their ducts. This is about the unio or freshwater muscle. Another example for this, good example for bivalves, Pelsipoda, is the mitrilus. Okay, two more things which I have forgotten to mention here in unio. Unio is found everywhere. Even if you go to a river, freshwater river in your area, you will get in the. Especially if you go to the summer when the river dries in most of the or stream dries, then if you just search, you will get it. You will get one or two unio. If the water body is not polluted, then even the unio produces many times the pearl, but that pearl has no value. When accidentally a sand or some particle enters into the mantle cavity, it secretes the pearl, but the pearl of the unio is of no use and economically no value. This next example, which I am going to discuss with you under the same class, is the mitrilus. Mitrilus is a eurythermal and are able to withstand freezing condition for several months. Eurythermal, which can tolerate large temperature fluctuation. Those organisms are known as eurythermal, which can tolerate larger temperature fluctuation. So even they can withstand the freezing condition for several months. They are uh, popularly known as blue mussels. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನೀಲಿ ಕಲ್ಲು ಅಂತ, are well acclimated to the temperature 5 to 20 degrees, the ideal temperature range. But even up to 29 degrees Celsius for adults, they can uh, withstand this temperature. But if the salinity is less than 15%, then they cannot survive. So that's why higher salinity means they are found in the oceans, seas, or some part of estuary where the salinity is above 15%. And but they are very hardy organism which can withstand other environmental fluctuation but not the salinity. They are found even up to a depth of 10 meters in the ocean. Mostly they are found very close to the in the shallow water, maximum up to 10 meters. Found in the subtidal and intertidal zones on the rocky shores, and they are remain permanently attached here. As far as their movement is concerned, it is very very limited. The adults cannot move because they are attached. But the larval and juvenile stages, they can move to other places by drifting in the water body waves. So this is how the Mytilus appears. All of you may be knowing it. It's a very good edible one also. So you may be knowing about this. So Mytilus is characterized by the smooth equilateral shell, usually purple, blue, or dark brown. On the surface, you can see the concentric growth of these lines on its surface, growth lines. The interior of the shell is pearl white, and the mantle, if you observe internally, has whitish or yellow color. Extending from closed shell are fibrous brown byssal threads for attachment. See, these are the byssal threads. And with the help of these byssal threads, the animals can attach. So this is how internally they appears. The hinge ligaments. This is the posterior end. This is the anterior end. Here you can here it comes the bisal threads. After the egg is fertilized, here it develops into a larva. In all molluscan, there is a larval stage into a ciliated trophophore larva. Then the ciliated trophophore larva changes into another larva called as veliger larva. And the veliger larva stage may last for 1 to 1.5 months. Usually during this time, the larva develops ciliated fan-like protrusions. Even they are the filter feeders. Then they develops into a juvenile and find some permanent settlement location. And anywhere situated away from the mature cells, rocks, hearts, or even the larger other shells of other molluscans will be there. Uh, Within a week, the juvenile doubles its size and detaches again and drift to find a permanent substratum to which it attaches. Even the young adults will attach to the sea floor with the help of their byssus thread. Even sometimes they were attached to another muscles, creating a very colony, creating a muscle bed. See, like this. Here in the mitillus, sexes are separate and gametes are released into the water. So that's why external fertilization occurs. Especially in between April to September, the mitillus spawn and releases the eggs and sperm, depending upon the water temperature, current, and other environmental factor. In most of the population, it has observed that gonads begin to develop from October to November, and the gametogenesis occurs throughout the winter, so that gonads will be fully mature in the early spring. In the early spring, there will be partial spawning. Some gonads are released, which is followed by fast gametogenesis, and those gametes will mature in the early summer. Then they go for secondary spawning in late August or September. This is how inside the mitillus appears. Larvae spawn during the spring. They have the advantage because during the spring in the ocean water there will be phytoplankton boom, and they can get the food plenty. An individual female can produce 5 to 8 million eggs. One larger individual may spawn 40 million eggs. In normal temperature, the larval development may last for 20 days. Then the larval growth and metamorphosis is always between spring and early summer. And that also takes another month. Then the veliger larva can delay metamorphosis up to 40 days, even up to 6 months also. Then they develop into a young juvenile and then grow. Uh, the lifespan of the mitillus, it varies considerably, and it all depends on the site of attachment. in large part of the many of the birds they feed on them. Uh, Mussels that settle in exposed location, 98% of them dies within 1 year because they are become prey to predators. See, this is how the Mytilus attaches. The Mytilus feeds on phytoplanktons, dinoflagellates, small diatoms, zoospores, flagellates, even on other protozoans. Even they can scoop on other algae, even detritus that is being filtered from the surrounding water. Even blue mussels are suspension filter feeders. They are also considered as a very good scavengers of the ocean, collecting anything in the water column that is small enough to digest. They can trap and digest it. These blue mussels have very good economic importance. People harvest the blue mussel as food and they are used in commercial aquaculture also. There are many people though who grow them commercially, important food source in some coastal areas. And the shells are used in making artifacts, ornamentals, jewelries. Blue mussels also help to limit the algal growth because the blue mussels feeds on algae. Otherwise, in some of the sea, Mediterranean Sea and elsewhere, the blue mussel, if the blue mussels are not there, probably entire sea would have been filled with the algal growth. But they control this algal growth. So that's why also they become very, very important. They have very good food value. Even they are economically very, very important. So this is the two example for bivalvia, and in the next class we can move on to the gastropoda, and for the day we will uh, stop here. Stop here, and in the next class we can continue. ಏನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? ಎನಿ ಡೌಟ್? ಏನಾದರೂ ಡೌಟ್ ಇತ್ತಾ? ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತಾ? ಕಾಣ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತಾ? ಹೇಳಿ.